Hey, everybody. How are you doing? I am so happy to see you. I took a break last week from any and all of the things because I went to a cabin and I kept working with my students during the day, but I kind of took a break from everything else and just gave myself that time. And I rested and I watched TV. I binge watched Netflix. It was great. But now I'm back and we have to get things rolling and going. So today's bold conversation is going to focus mostly on having conversations with people. And when racist comments come up, what do you do? So the first reaction that I would say is something that I have needed to work on and work with is rage quitting. I mean, I have a really passionate heart, and that can get me to a place where I feel big emotions. I feel them very quickly and they pile on, and I just want to, rage quit on life, throw my mic, send that person walking, and be off of that relationship. But in reality, this isn't something that we can do. Plus, it stops our work from continuing. It stops our goal of expanding anti racism, making people aware of what's going on and what they're saying. Because oftentimes, what I've noticed is that a lot of people don't really know that they are being racist. They don't really know that they are a part of the system. So, one thing that I've learned is that there are many different approaches that you can have when you're talking about or having a conversation and something comes up. So, one thing that I have had happen to me is that I have been asked, number one, I'm asked, like, where are you from? And that is like the most common thing that you will see that opens the door for miscommunication, microaggressions, and all of that, ugly can of worms. So when people ask me, like, where are you from? Because they see my name or I've introduced myself and they're wondering, like, where my last name comes from or something like that. So the first time, that comes up, I'm like, well, I'm from here. Yeah, but where are you from? Well, what do you mean? That is something that will disarm the person that is asking you. Like, what do you mean where I'm from? Another thing that you can do is open up a conversation in regards to what made you think I was from anywhere else? Just ask questions that can guide the person to letting them know that if you have to answer uncomfortable questions, then they should be fine with answering uncomfortable questions themselves. And that also opens up a conversation on, why is it important to know where I'm from? I know that in my culture in Puerto Rico, you would tell your grandparents and people that were older in your family if you were, hanging out with a friend or if you were dating somebody, they would ask you for the last names. And that's how they would kind of see where that family came from and ask, like, is that from this town or that town? Or are those the people from, Ponce? Or are those the Muñoz from Barrio Borinquen in Caguas or stuff like that, and that is also a part of our systemic race because they would also figure out what the heritage of the family was mostly from. So those are all ways in which we can feel and realize how our racism shapes the way in which we interact with other people. Another question that I get asked a lot is, and this was this is a really curious question. I understand where it could come from, but I don't get why I get asked this. Is, oh, you're from Puerto Rico, but you look white. And it's like, really? Fabulous. So because my skin color is the way that you think it is, or it looks in a certain way, or has a certain tone, then I shouldn't be Puerto Rican. I mean, and Puerto Ricans come in all sizes, colors, shades. Um, there is beautiful diversity in Puerto Rico. But that was one of the questions that really made me yeah, made me question where was my heritage from. And so when I did my ancestry, I realized, and I got my results back, I realized I am as Puerto Rican as they come. I have Spanish heritage, Portuguese heritage. I have African heritage from different areas in Africa. And I also have Taino heritage, which are the Native Americans that lived in the island of Puerto Rico when it was discovered. So, yeah, it's like we should stop focusing so much on where people are from, what their heritage is, and really focus on the person we have in front of us. And I think that doesn't mean that you are ignoring where the person is from, because you do want to be mindful of cultural aspects that you should respect. But instead of approaching it that way, you could have a different approach in a way that you could ask questions like, where did your family come from? And ask something like, what are things that your family enjoys doing? And those questions should usually be reserved for when you have a more established relationship with the person. It should not be the first thing you ask when you're getting to know somebody. Other than that, I think that another thing that I've learned to use in my favor whenever I'm having conversations and a microaggression feels like it's coming on is that I have the power of silence. A silent stare can say way more than 500 words. And a silent stare accompanied by a question or accompanied by an opportunity for the person to explain themselves also keeps me in check of having any strong emotions that will just make me jump to conclusions or really ramp up how I feel. In the end, I think that we need to have bold conversations with people, but at the same time, you have to figure out how you can do that without at a moment in time when you feel ready. And what do I mean by this? Because in one sense of it, we don't want to be colorblind to the people that we're meeting and the people that we're surrounded with. We want to know their heritage so we can honor that and we can respect that. And for example, if I know that I have a friend who is Jewish, I can probably say happy Hanukkah when that time of the year comes around. And it makes me more conscious of the people that I have around me. But at the same time, when we use the person's heritage as a means to establish preconceived notions on opinions that my racial group might have on the other person, then that is where we need to stop, reevaluate all of that, and then figure out a way to move forward. Two examples in regards to that. Number one, I remember through my whole life hearing people say things like, oh, they're from the Dominican Republic. So what? And it was usually used in a racial exclusive way. And I've heard a lot of people now that I live here in the States use their questions in a way that might be kind of to dig into information, but at the same time, kind of a way to other people. Bottom line is, one thing that I've learned to do is to stop and ask questions, because sometimes it could also be because the person wants to know if there's anything they should be aware of so that they can be, culturally aware of where I'm coming from. And those two things can be happening at the same time. So it is important to ask questions and at the same time try to see if you can assume positive intent up until the degree where the impact, and listen to this, the impact of the other person's actions allows you to assume positive intent. Because usually people will throw that one in my face, like assume positive intent, like that's just something that I can turn on, that assumption. And when you are a person of color or BIPOC, that's impossible, because we've grown up, or we've been opened into society into a way where anything that has to do with me identifying my culture or not giving in or catering to whiteness is used against me. So it is impossible for me to assume positive intent all the time. But at the same time, I can stop myself at times, and to the degree possible, while the person is speaking, give them the benefit of the doubt, ask questions, and then figure out if that person is really trying to be hurtful with their words, or they're seriously not really trying to do anything bad, just want to know more information about you, want to get to know you, have a better relationship with you. Or number 3, if it's coming from a place of ignorance, because that too can happen. I mean, I've had people ask me if I'm a citizen. Puerto Ricans are citizens since 1917. And at the same time, if I were not a citizen, who cares? That doesn't matter. It shouldn't really be anything to do with me as a person, or the how capable I am of being in a relationship with you, or how capable I am of doing my work. And usually, the context in which I've been asked that question is in a work context. So that's why I say that. Because usually in like personal relationships or conversations with the neighbors, they've never asked me anything like that. But in a work context, it's like that is used to establish who I am in the landscape of power that is shared among white people. And considering that I look white, it's to know how much power I can be taken away, or how much power I have over decisions and me as an individual within a working environment. So I know that was a lot right now, but these are all things that we need to deal with every day. And the most important thing is that you need to be true to yourself. And if there is something that somebody says that you find offensive or that you find insulting, then try to give them the benefit of the doubt. Ask questions. If that still doesn't work, or it's just something that feels iffy or completely racist, then call it out. But don't try to be, sometimes my cultural background is a cultural background where we say things and we have mannerisms and we move our hands, and, that's who we are as a culture. And I shouldn't have to play that down. But at the same time, if I'm communicating with somebody that's not from my same culture, I am going to try to be as understandable to them as I can be. And usually what I do is, I say something like, that's making me uncomfortable. Could we change the subject? Or I simply switch the subject, or I don't say anything and I just carry on doing what I'm doing if the conversation does not include me directly. If it is a blatant racist comment, like, for example, something along the lines of all lives matter, what are you talking about? Then it is perfectly fine for you to call it out and say, yeah, but they haven't mattered. Black lives haven't mattered at all to the extent that our Constitution says that only 3 out of 5 Black lives mattered at a certain point in our history. So it's okay to start thinking and saying that Black lives matter, because the more we say that, the more we bring it up and we raise that up into our awareness, the more we will create conscience of how they haven't mattered until now. So I think that, we can be everyday anti-racist. And I think that in disarming people when we're having conversations and they say things that might be racist, when we give them the benefit by asking questions, we also give them a chance to correct themselves and kind of, figure out how to fix it then and there. We give them grace, but at the same time, if we need to call it out as it is, it's not our job to fix them or make them feel comfortable within what they're saying, if what they're saying is not correct or not right. So yeah, these are my 2 or 3 tips on how to manage microaggressions and how to manage conversations that can go down the path of racism. Now, for anybody who's never really heard of a microaggression, those examples that I gave of, are you a citizen? Where do you come from? But where do you come from? Those are all microaggressions because they're not completely explicit aggressions, verbal aggressions, or, they're not physical at all, but they are microaggressions in the sense that when you add them up, they are racist and they hurt us as people. And they are there within the racist system to continue to build down people that we need to share power with and people that we need to share space with. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. So everybody, I am really happy to see you again. We are going to have a new episode of Thursday Thoughts tomorrow. So I will be on for that one tomorrow after work. Bye. Que Dios los bendiga. Que tengan una linda tarde. Y I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.